Okay, hey, we're here. I found a great little spot that is quiet. I can read. It's a little misty this morning, if you can see around me. It's really beautiful. All right. Anyway, yesterday we found out that Kimba is stuck with Sabo. All right. So he wants to get away from them. He only has one person that seems to be helping him, and that's Nupa. And Sabo just found out that Kimba has the power. And we should try to think about this and say, how is he going to do that? How is he going to use this knowledge, Sabo? How is he going to use this knowledge now that he knows Kimba has the power? All right. So right now we know that he's making him go to his cave. Let's see what happens. Chapter 14. There, Sabo said, pointing to a niche in the corner of his cave. Kimba threw down the heavy fur covering that Nupa had given him the night before. Now, at least, he would have shelter and a warm place to sleep. But he did not relish the idea of living in Sabo's cave. I have helped you and your people, Kimba said. Now I must go. I must quiet, the sorcerer commanded. Remain here. Do not leave. He stalked out, and immediately Kimba saw a hunter slouch down at the cave's entrance. So now Kimba thought he was Sabo's apprentice, and he was also Sabo's prisoner. He went over the cave carefully. There was scarcely room in it to take several score steps, and the roof barely permitted Sabo to stand upright. At the far end, he saw the costumes, tools, and implements of a sorcerer, but not nearly as many as Utrecht possessed. The cave walls were of the greatest interest to him. They were filled with the likenesses of animals, as Utrecht's grotto was. But these drawings were crude and lines squiggly and coloring weak. Mammoths were hard to tell from bison or reindeer. Kimba snorted in disdain. Late that afternoon, long before dusk, the tribe once again began celebrating the kill of the one-tusk. There were shouts and laughter, and the smell of roasted mammoth flesh was thick in the air. At one point, the hunter who guarded him entered the cave and tossed a few strips of meat on the ground beside Kimba. He ate it sullenly, staring out at the cook fire. The unanswered question repeatedly crowded every other consideration out of his mind. Was it too late to bring the splinter of tusk back to Rab? He kept trying to grasp the question as though it were a boulder and roll it to one side out of his way. But it was not easy. It was planted solidly. To occupy his mind in some other way, he went to Sabo's painting materials. The sorcerer had evidently intended to start another drawing soon. The colors had been prepared. There were reds, yellows, and browns from the clay-like pieces of ochre found in the cliffs, and black cut from lengths of charcoal. Each color had been mixed with a thick binder made of animal fat and was stored separately in the indentations of a flat, pockmarked rock. Kimba found no brush and decided Sabo had not yet learned to make one. The sorcerer must use only his fingers and hands. Again, the boy felt contempt for his captor. He's like looking at him going, man, you're not very good at this stuff, are you? He made a sudden decision and dipped one finger into the red. Instantly, he began to draw a reindeer on one of the sections of wall that was still there. He compelled himself to consider every small detail of the animal's body, emptying his mind of his fears and concerns. Soon he was utterly lost in the work, unmindful of the noises of the feast. As he transferred to the rocky surface the likeness of the beast he so clearly saw in his imagination. The cave grew more shadowy as darkness fell. Kimba hurried, squinting in the feeble light. He had not had time to do a careful, thorough job. The painting reflected his haste. Yet when he stood back and evaluated the finished work, he knew it was far more skillfully done than any of Sabo's drawings. Was it the power that had guided him as he painted? If it was, then his power clearly was superior to Sabo's. And with that power, he would still be able to return in time to save Rab. Tomorrow he would find a way to escape, he resolved. The power would guide him. The cave was totally dark now, and he lay down on his fur pallet and was asleep within moments. When he awoke in the morning, the first thing he saw was the sorcerer. He was standing before the painting of the reindeer. Sensing that Kimba had moved, he whirled to face him. He raised a long, thin arm to point at the picture, and he shaped his mouth as if to ask a question. But there was no need. He knew whose hand had drawn the reindeer. Kimba crouched against the wall. Why had he done it? He asked himself now. He should not have shown up Sabo, not aroused the sorcerer's jealousy. Why had he given in to that impulse? Sabo stepped toward the boy, his arm back as if to unleash a blow. Then two hunters entered the cave. "It is time to hunt again," one of them said. The other gripped his companion's arm and gestured at the newly painted reindeer. Their jaws dropped. Then they beamed with pleasure. "Good," said one. "Good, Sabo." "A good hunt," exclaimed the other. He patted the reindeer and then danced in front of it, humming happily. "Surely the hunt would be one of their best," said the first man. "With a likeness like that? Surely this painting meant great success for the tribe. What do you think is going to happen now?" You should be kind of doing the thing where you try to figure it out. You try to predict what's happening next. Sabo thrust out his chest and stood tall beside the picture. He made a sweeping gesture. Sounds like he's going to take credit for it. "You see what I have done? Call the other hunters. Let them see. Let them dance. You will hunt as never before. You see what my power has done." As soon as the two men had dashed out, Sabo shook a finger in Kimba's face. "You will say nothing," he warned. "Nothing." The hunters of the tribe had assembled for the summoning rite. Remember I told you at the beginning of the book, or earlier in the book, we were watching Utrecht summoning rite. Now we're going to watch Sabo summoning rite. And I want you to kind of see if you can tell the difference between the two. The hunters of the tribe had assembled for the summoning rite. They were packed within Sabo's small cave, surrounded the sorcerer in a tight semicircle. "I have summoned game," the sorcerer screamed, raking his claw-like fingernails against the drawing of the reindeer. He was clad in a mantle of pure white and a bison headdress. "You will find game. You will hunt well. My power is strong." The men cheered and pushed forward, jostling Sabo so that he almost lost his balance. Kimba, almost hidden in his corner, looked on critically. It was so different from Utrecht ceremonies. There were no torches and no dancing shadows, no sudden entrance by the sorcerer, no mounting cadence of excitement and exultation. There's no power at work here, Kimba thought. Yet the hunters waved their spears and stamped their feet enthusiastically. "Go and kill!" Sabo shrieked. With jubilant shouts, the hunters left. When they were out of sight, Sabo walked to the wall where Kimba had drawn the reindeer. He studied it a long while, then sat down, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. He began to chant in his high sing-song voice. But before long, his eyes opened and shifted to Kimba. The boy was staring at him. It seemed to annoy Sabo. "Do not watch me," he ordered. His eyes closed again, then quickly reopened. Kimba swung his gaze away. Have you ever done that where someone's like this and you're staring at them and then they go and they look and see you? Kimba swung his gaze away, but he knew Sabo was aware he had been staring. He understood that this somehow grated on the sorcerer. Sabo was accustomed to privacy in his chamber, and he also knew that Kimba was not looking upon him with admiration. See, Kimba's looking at him like going, "Are you for real? Because you're really suck at doing this stuff." But Kimba thought, now that he had inspected everything else in the cave, there was not much else to focus his attention on except the sorcerer. Sabo realized this too. Roughly, he took Kimba's arm and pulled him outside. "Do not come back until I order you," he said. The boy felt a moment of hope. For with Sabo in his cave and with the hunters gone, today might provide his best opportunity to escape. But he saw Sabo talking to the women and the elders of the tribe, and he knew they were being told not to let Kimba out of their sight. He walked idly among them, conscious of the change in their attitudes. He was not one of them, not to be trusted, yet he was now associated with Sabo in some way they did not understand. Although they no longer glared with dislike or ridicule, they feared to smile at him or talk to him or even catch his eye. To them, he realized he was still different. Nupa was the only exception. For a time, he watched from a distance as she played with the 3 toddling children. She waved, but he did not go nearer. He did not want to cause further trouble for her. Eventually, pretending it was a haphazard stroll, he drifted toward the outer edge of the camp. He was a fast runner, and given a head start, he might well outdistance any pursuers. He came to the junipers where he had seen the butterfly. Slowly, he walked past them. "No more," a voice shouted. He turned to see 2 men standing not far behind him. One was young and strong. Kimba had noticed him earlier because one of his legs was stiff and he limped noticeably. Apparently, he would not resume hunting until his injury was better healed. The other man was elderly and stooped over. Kimba knew he could easily beat either in a race, but both men carried throwing sticks, and he was keenly aware that he could not outrun the javelins those sticks could hurl. He smiled to assure them that he had no plans to go any further. Then he stretched out on the grass as though to doze or daydream until Sabo needed him. But his mind was fully alert. This must be the day he fled, no matter what the risk. There was a light pinging sound near his elbow, and he shot to his feet. He heard a ripple of laughter and saw Nupa behind one of the junipers. He realized she had tossed a pebble at a boulder wedged into the ground beside him. "You are not asleep then," she said, giggling. "No." "And you have no chores?" "I await Sabo's command." She joined him, and he looked anxiously back toward the caves. The 2 men still watched, but they made no attempt to force Nupa to leave. "And you have no chores?" Kimba said to her. "The children rest now." She and Kimba sat down and placed their backs to the large boulder. The day was warm and pleasant. The higher ground was dry now, and there were only a few patches of moist earth where the snow had been slow to melt. Kimba said little, but only a question or 2 from him was required to prompt Nupa to tell him about herself. He learned that her parents were dead, that she had no sisters or brothers, and that her main task, as he had observed, was the care of the few small children who also were motherless. There were no other children her own age in the tribe, but it made no difference. She had her duties. There was always much work to be done, and in a few seasons she would become a hunter's mate. She did not know if she would be given to one of her own tribe or of another. On occasion, 2 tribes would meet and share a meal. They might exchange belongings, some colorful shells from a far-off body of deep water, or for a rare animal skin or a large slab of flint from the chalky cliffs. It often happened that young women of one tribe would go over to another. It was necessary because the tribes were small and the members were closely related. This was the only way to avoid continual intermarriage. "Do you fear to go to another tribe?" Kimba asked. "I do not know. I would try to make their ways my ways, but not to be with my own tribe would be so strange." "That is so," Kimba said. "You are thinking of your tribe and of this Rab?" Kimba nodded. "I must go to him at once." Nupa paused. "It may be too late. You have thought of that?" "Yes, it is possible. I do not know, but I must try." "And it must be today," he was about to tell her, but he stopped because he thought he had seen a streak of color in a stand of willows and birches not far distant. These were the trees that grew near the spring where the tribe went for fresh water. Kimba had seen movement only out of the corner of his eye, but it had appeared as a flash of red among the pale white and green of the trunks and budding leaves. He centered his attention on the trees. Again, he saw the hint of red. His heart began to pound. Had he seen what he thought he had? And then he knew, for the dog stood clearly at the edge of the grove. Its muzzle was uplifted. It sniffed the air. Nupa gasped and clutched Kimba. She had seen it too. She turned in fright to call one of the men. "No," Kimba whispered. He covered her mouth with his hand and looked over his shoulder. The two men were busy talking to each other back near the caves. Any sudden movement from Kimba would draw their attention to him, he knew. But for now, they had relaxed their guard. "It will attack us," Nupa said softly, moving her mouth free of his hand. "No, it will not." Quickly, Kimba told her of the dog and the adventures the two of them had shared. Her face radiated wonder. The dog had either seen him or caught his scent. It began taking hesitant steps in their direction. Nupa shrank back against Kimba. "No," Kimba called to the dog, trying to keep his voice hushed. "No!" It must not rush up to him. It would surely be seen. He took Nupa's arm and walked toward the caves. On the other side of the junipers, he looked back. The dog had returned to the grove of trees. "Good," he said. He grinned. The dog had followed him here. It was waiting, and it would join him when he made his escape. Nupa glanced back at the trees, and her voice was filled with awe. "It has come close to you?" she questioned. "Yes." "Right up to you?" "Yes." "You have touched it?" "Yes." "And it has not attacked you?" "It is my friend," he said. Nupa smiled hesitantly, her eyes wide at the thought of it. "I believe you," she said. "Now, I must go." "Farewell, Nupa," said Kimba. He must not be seen with her anymore, he thought, or after his escape she might be mistreated because of her friendship with him. It was sad that he would speak no more with her, but now he must make his plan. The power must speed him on his journey this day. Kimba strolled casually past the series of cave openings. Again, he was aware that many eyes were on him. "Look well," he muttered quietly. "After today, you will see me no more." The young hunter and the older man were bound to become careless as the day wore on, he thought. He would return to the edge of the camp and wait for his chance. If he could make it halfway to those trees near the spring before they noticed him, he might be beyond reach of their throwing sticks, provided they missed with their first casts. It would be a grave risk, but he determined to take it. And then Sabo emerged from his cave. He stretched out his arm and pointed at Kimba. "Come here!" For a moment, Kimba froze. Had the sorcerer read his thoughts? Then he remembered Sabo's summoning rite. Remember how bad it was? No, he did not think this sorcerer had the power to discover his intentions. Sabo motioned him to the cave and had him sit on the floor. He stared hard at Kimba with his eyes that glittered like a bird of prey. Then he began to question the boy. What was his name? When Kimba had answered, Sabo asked where he was from. Kimba gestured to the north and westward. Sabo did not seem to know of the tribe. Perhaps the two bands had never met. Kimba decided because the tribe seldom hunted to the south, that was the direction in which the Forbidden Mountains lay. And always in the past there had been sufficient game herds to the north of them. Now Sabo began to question him more insistently. Was there a sorcerer in Kimba's tribe? Who was it? What did he do? How did he dress? What were his ways? Kimba answered as best he could. Each time there was a long pause as Sabo digested the information. In his replies, Kimba did not restrain himself. He portrayed Utrecht and Utrecht's feats with more imagination than accuracy. You know, like pretty much all boys, they like to exaggerate stories. But he did not care. Sabo was inferior to Utrecht and must be made to realize it. Sabo continued asking what Kimba did to assist the sorcerer. Again, Kimba's answers were fanciful. He described himself as more essential to Utrecht than he really was. There was confusion and doubt written on Sabo's face, and again he regarded the reindeer Kimba had drawn. Kimba could imagine his thoughts. Does this boy have more of the power than I? Can I learn from him? Can he help me, or will he try to overcome me and take my place? The sorcerer pondered these questions, and Kimba grew impatient. None of this was of any concern to him. All that mattered was that he be on his way. From a distance, he heard a shout. It was the hunters returning, and Kimba's heart fell. There would be no opportunity to steal away now, at least during the daylight. He quickly began to revise his plan, perhaps tonight, if there was another feast. Sabo went out to meet the hunters, and Kimba knew at once there would be no feast or rejoicing. For wails of anguish had gone up from some of the women, and the hunters looked grim. The boy could easily hear their conversation. One hunter had been sent on his final journey, gored and trampled by a woolly rhinoceros. No reindeer were sighted. The hunt was a failure. "It is the boy!" Sabo cried out. "The boy?" one of the hunters asked. "He brought bad power. It is his doing. My power was strong, but he made it bad. He has spoiled your hunt." Kimba cowered against the farthest wall. He was being blamed again, just as his own tribe had blamed him. And now there was no Utrecht to flee to for help. Once more he wished he had no power, good or bad. Once more he wondered, had he really harmed their hunt? Was he really to blame? Sabo growled some words to a stocky young hunter, who then approached the cave, looked angrily into it, and sat on a boulder near the entrance. He laid his throwing stick on one knee, prominently on view. His other hand rested on the shaft of the knife in his belt. Kimba was a prisoner in Sabo's cave. He lay down dejectedly on his fur pallet. He was trapped here for one more night. He possessed the life-giving piece of tusk, but what good was it to Rab? The voices rang out loudly, discussing every detail of the day's tragedy. With nightfall, they became louder. A fire had been set, and more of the one tusk's meat was being cooked. But there were no sounds of laughter or pleasure. He must use the power in some way, Kimba told himself. He must not brood about the obstacles to escape. He must find a way to use the power to surmount those obstacles. See, we all have obstacles. How do we get by them? Do we just put our heads down and get sad? Or do we think of a way to make it happen? But how, he said to the darkness surrounding him, how could he use the power? How could it work through him to show him a way? The power, whatever it was, seemed so elusive. The more he thought about it, the harder it was to grasp. He made his mind go blank so that it would be like a bare wall on which the power could paint an image. Within moments, he heard a small, friendly voice. For an instant, he was convinced it originated within his own mind. But then he became aware that it came from just beyond the entrance to the cave. It was the voice of Nupa, who was talking to the lookout. She was bringing Kimba some meat, she told him. He mumbled something and returned, and she said it would take only but a moment to give it to the boy. The hunter muttered his reluctant approval. "See, I bring you meat," she said to Kimba. Her face was pale, shimmering oval within the cave. She touched Kimba's shoulder and put her mouth close to his ear. In the softest of whispers, she reported what she had just overheard. Sabo had persuaded the tribe to take Kimba in the morning. So in the morning, they're going to wake up and take Kimba. They're going to take Kimba in the morning to the place where the hunter had begun his final journey, where the hunter was killed. There, the boy would be lashed or tied securely to a tree and left alone. He would be defenseless, the prey of whatever creature happened by. Then Sabo had told them, when some animal destroyed the boy, let's say some saber-toothed tiger or wolf or something comes and eats the boy, Kimba's evil power would enter into the beast. The creature would carry it away with the tribe, and the tribe would be bothered no more. "You must go now," Kimba said to her when she had finished. "The lookout is waiting. But you, I will be gone tonight." "But they are watching." "It does not matter, Nupa. I will be gone tonight. I have placed a spear there, just outside the cave for you." "Good. We will see each other at another time. He smiled, but he did not know if she could see him. Go now, he whispered. He felt her quick final touch, and then he was alone again. So it's got to be tonight. Well, for us, it'll be tomorrow. But we'll read it tomorrow, chapter 15, I think. We'll read chapter 15 tomorrow and see how he is going to plan his escape and see if he's going to be successful in doing so. All right. Well, you guys have a nice day today, and I shall see you tomorrow. Till then, take care.